Good morning, good morning. I am here with Iris Harlan and with Kim Rulo. As we are working out this Zoom to YouTube link, let me first begin by asking the two of you, how are you doing this morning?
Well, I'm excited for this opportunity to present this poem video that Kim and I have been working on for the last month. Thank you for making this possible.
And I completely concur with Iris's sentiment. I'm very excited to be here and talking with the two of you today. It's great to see everybody, if not in the physical space, at least virtually.
And for those who are joining us on YouTube, rest assured this conversation will be posted to Facebook upon its conclusion. But let's get our program started. Iris Harlan, ECDC Director at Temple Emmanuel, architect for this particular project. It's a pleasure to connect with you before we watch the video. Would you tell us a little bit more about how this video came together?
Sure. Like I said, it was actually about a 4-week project. From time to time over the past many years, I've written poems, and they're all probably stuck in a drawer somewhere here at this desk. This is the first time that this poem had a specific purpose, the stay-at-home poem. Well, the title didn't come till later, but it was for children, most specifically for the children of Temple Emmanuel ECDC. And it had a message. And so I kind of thought, well, you know, how can that message get out there? And I knew Kim. I knew Kim through working with her. I've worked with her prior. She was the one who developed our logo for ECDC. And I just had a feeling, a good hunch, and I was right, that she would be the right person. So I called her and or probably texted her first and said, what do you think? Well, you wanted to give this a try. Do you want it? What I initially asked her was, will you do illustrations for the poem? Kim, do you want to kind of take it from there on what happened next? Or
yeah, absolutely. So she had contacted me, like she said, and originally it was just going to be one illustration on kind of a one sheet for the poem. And then as we started talking and I started developing things, I drew a couple of images for her, and I was thinking kind of a Shel Silverstein kind of one illustration and done thing. But I drew some illustrations, and when I showed them to Iris, she fell in love with the little boy character that I drew. And the other thing that I noticed when I read her poem, that it had a very cinematic feel. I usually think in cinematic animation aspect. And I thought, you know, it might be nice to illustrate each stanza. So we started talking through that process as well, where each stanza had some sort of motion or life to it. So it kind of evolved from there. And then it went from a one sheet poem to, oh, maybe it's a storybook. And then after we put it in the storybook form, we think this might be something that should be animated. And then we were like, well, maybe we need some music to this. So we talked to Iris's son to do music for us as well. And I got to brush up on my skills with animation and other software. So I definitely became an animator very quickly. But the one thing I will say is that's been really nice, you know, the technology that we have in place now has been so great, even though this is such a tragic time. It's been such a great way for us to collaborate. We were able to do everything digitally, and I could share my screen with her real time and say, what do you think of this animation? Or what do you think of this slideshow? So like I said, very sad time, but there's some creative things coming out of it, which is great.
Absolutely. And before we get to watch that newest bit of creativity, Iris, would you share with us a little bit about what you're hoping families will take from this poem?
Absolutely. Before I do that, I want to give a shout out to my son, Isaac. Before I even shared the poem with Kim, excuse me, I sent it to Isaac. Isaac is a pianist and he works with in the world of musical theater, and he does a lot of accompanying. So he's very familiar with lyrics and rhythm. And he was kind of my muse. He helped me develop the poem. And then kind of at the last hour, when we did decide to add the music, and I think that was last Thursday, I asked him to compose something for it, and he had something for it 3 hours later. So my thank you to my son, Isaac. Yes, for families. Oh gosh, there's so much I could say about this. You know, as an educator, we are, as a parents and educators, what do? We help children to process what's going on in the world around them. We give them labels. We facilitate that processing. And here we were in new circumstances where we didn't even know what was going on. I'll never forget that March 13th when the children were leaving school, and we had just found out at about 2 or 2:30 that Mount Lebanon School District had closed and that we would be closing. We didn't even have a chance to say goodbye. There was absolutely no explanation because we hadn't even formed it in our heads. So as we as adults are processing this, and that's challenging, I wanted this poem it started, I don't know how it started, kind of something popped in my head, but the purpose was to have one way. Of course, there are many, many, many ways of helping children process. And my hope was that some children would relate to this. So that's how that evolved.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. All right, well, let's watch this video together, and then Iris, I want to ask you a question as a parent when we finish, but with no further ado.
Stay at Home poem. Poem by Iris Harlan. Illustrations by Kim Ulo. Music by Isaac Harlan. For the children of Temple Emmanuel Early Childhood Development Center. What is this thing? A quarantine? Because of a virus that can't be seen? We stay at home, we wash hands clean, we see our friends, but on a screen. School is closed to a new routine. I cut some pictures from a magazine. Lucky to go out where the grass is green, I jump in our yard on the trampoline. I pretend to be a dragon and a bulldoze machine, but I miss my grandma and Aunt Josephine. I'm lonely and bored. Sometimes I'm mean because of this virus that can't be seen. How many more days, 10 or 15, when that germ goes away or we get a vaccine? Mom says, don't worry. With 6 feet between, we'll stop the spread of COVID-19.
It is such a gift to bring to the community, and I'm grateful to both of you. Iris, as a parent myself, it's challenging to find the right words to try to explain this to my young person without bringing this whole element of fear into her world. What guidance would you offer to me and to my family and to other ECDC families as this physical isolation continues to drag on?
Well, you know, I think I've said many times in the last years that what I learn more and more is how each child is different. When we're studying child development, you know, we learn how they're the same. We learn about the developmental stages, and then or out in the world with children, and we learn how unique they are. But I think, being the listening part is universal. Listening for how is my child, how are our children processing this? There's a balancing act always between giving too much information and maybe not giving enough information. If we don't say anything, then we're not, or if we kind of feel like we want to make it go away because it might be stressful, there's the danger of kind of not giving them the tools that they can master. Again, if we give them too much information and they get too afraid, then they can't master. So in some ways, we can look at development as a series of mastery steps. And of course, they're always ongoing, and they're ongoing into adulthood. But one element in mastering our fear is mastering our understanding. So if we can understand this germ in a way that we feel we have some control over, and that's actually exactly what we're all doing now. We're trying to control it, and we're working together. And I think there's a lot of information and a lot of messages out there about how we're helping each other and to stay healthy by working together. And I think that's a message that will probably be very helpful to children.
Thank you. And Kim, I so appreciated the illustrations, the animation, your creativity in putting this together. Would you say a little bit more about other creative projects you're working on at this time?
Sure. First, I just wanted to say congratulations, Iris. This is so fantastic to be a part of this with you.
Likewise, thank you.
And just listening to your words and what you said right now, I just think it's so important to have this kind of messaging out there. So congratulations. This is so fantastic. Right now, I'm working on a couple of things. I'm finishing up some illustrations for the respiratory center at Children's Hospital. It's a pamphlet called Breathe, a brochure, and we're helping kids understand how to use, kids and parents how to understand how to use the trachea tubes and things like that. So I've been illustrating that. A little bit more medical illustrations, but nonetheless fun. I'm also doing a lot of things with the Dormont Corona Choir. Which is a group that stemmed out of being inspired by what was happening in Italy with the sing-alongs that have been happening. Our neighborhood sings every Sunday. This was started by Amy Constantine Klein in our neighborhood, and I live in an awesome South Hills neighborhood of Dormont. And yeah, so I am helping make videos to promote this thing every week. So every week a new song.
Wonderful. I am so grateful to both of you, not only for your time today, but for creating this amazing resource for Temple families. That video will be live on Temple's Facebook page and on the ECDC Facebook page at 10:30 this morning, as will a copy of this conversation for others who want to watch it. Thank you for your creativity. Thank you for your time. Thank you for this wonderful tool to help us all through a very difficult time. I'm grateful.
Well, thank you, Kim, for your partnership, and Rabbi for your support. Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you very much.